I never imagined the house that once held all my happiest memories would be the one that shattered me. It was pouring that night, the kind of rain that feels like the sky itself is crying for you. I was only 22, standing in the middle of the living room that still smelled faintly of my mother's lavender candles. Even 3 years after the accident took both my parents, my hands were shaking as I faced my brother-in-law, Mike. "You can't sell it!" I screamed, voice cracking like the thunder outside. "Mom and Dad left this house to Emily and me equally. It's our home." Mike's face twisted with that same cold anger I'd seen too many times lately. "Your sister and I need the money, Mia. My business is drowning in debt. You've done nothing but take up space since you dropped out of college. This isn't your house anymore." My older sister Emily just stood there by the window, arms wrapped around herself, tears sliding down her cheeks. She wouldn't even look at me. Before I could beg, Mike grabbed my arm, hard enough to bruise, and dragged me toward the front door. My suitcase, the one he'd already packed while I was at work, flew out into the rain like trash. The door slammed behind me with a sound that still echoes in my nightmares. I stood there, soaked instantly, rain mixing with the hot tears burning my face. "Emily!" I shouted, pounding on the wood until my fists hurt. A text buzzed on my phone a minute later. "Don't come back. I'm sorry." How did it come to this? One stupid argument over property, and suddenly I had no family, no roof, nothing. I dragged that heavy suitcase down the dark street, shoes squelching, cold seeping into my bones, until I couldn't feel my fingers. That night I slept on a park bench, curled up like a stray dog, wondering if this was the end of my life at 22. The next few weeks were a blur of absolute despair. I crashed on friends' couches until they got tired of me. I took double shifts at the diner, but the money barely covered food. Every night the same question haunted me. Where do I go when the only people who were supposed to love me threw me away? One freezing evening in the shelter, scrolling through my cracked phone with numb fingers, I saw at a county auction listing. Dilapidated 2. Story fixer. Upper. Back taxes paid by buyer. Sold as is for $10. The photos showed a sagging porch, overgrown yard, broken windows staring like empty eyes. It was in a quiet rural town 2 hours away. Most people would have scrolled past, but something in my chest, maybe the last spark of hope, whispered, "This is it, Mia. Your last chance." I used every dollar I had left plus a tiny loan from the diner owner and hit buy now. The next morning I stood in front of the house, heart hammering. It looked even worse in person. Paint peeled like dead skin. The front door creaked open on rusty hinges, and the smell hit me first thick. Damp mold mixed with old wood and dust that made me cough. Wind howled through cracks in the walls like a lonely ghost. But it was mine. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't on someone else's couch. I was home. Even if home felt like it might collapse on me. The first nights were terrifying. I slept on an old mattress I dragged in, wrapped in 2 blankets that still weren't enough against the drafts. Every creak of the floorboards made me sit up, flashlight trembling in my hand. "Just the wind," I'd whisper to myself, but deep down I felt watched. During the days, I threw myself into fixing it. I patched holes with cheap wood from the hardware store, scrubbed layers of grime until my hands bled, painted the kitchen a soft cream that reminded me of Mom's old apron. Slowly, the house started to breathe again. Then the discoveries began. While prying up a loose floorboard in the upstairs bedroom to fix a squeak, I found a small metal box. Inside were yellowed letters and photographs. One photo showed my father younger, smiling, standing right here on this porch, with his arm around a woman I didn't recognize at first. My grandmother. Another letter, dated 2 years before my parents died, was addressed to me. My hands shook as I read, "Mia, if you're reading this, it means things went wrong with Mike. I bought this house in secret years ago as a safety net. He doesn't know it exists. Keep looking. The truth is here." My heart raced. I started tearing apart the house more carefully. Behind a false wall in the attic, the one I thought was just bad construction, I found a small safe. It took me 3 days of searching for the combination until I remembered the date of my parents' wedding. Inside, everything changed. There was the original will. Not the one Mike had shown us after the funeral. That one was forged. This document, signed and notarized, left the family home and every asset equally to Emily and me, with a clause that prevented any sale without both daughters' written consent. There were bank statements proving Mike had been siphoning money for his gambling debts long before my parents passed. But the real twist, the one that stole my breath, was the handwritten letter from my mother, tucked inside an old velvet pouch with a small flash drive. "Mia, sweetheart," it began. "Your father knew Mike was in trouble. We hid this house and these papers because we wanted to protect you girls, not punish anyone. The flash drive has a video. Watch it." I plugged it into my phone with trembling fingers. My mother's face appeared, pale, but calm, recorded weeks before the accident. She explained that Mike wasn't just greedy loan sharks had been threatening our whole family because of an old business deal gone wrong that Dad had tried to fix quietly. Mike had been trying to sell the house to save us all, but in the worst way possible. Then Mom smiled softly and said the words that broke me open. "The real redemption isn't money, it's forgiveness. This house was always meant to bring you home to us. And to each other." I sat on the dusty attic floor and cried until I had no tears left. The secret wasn't just about property or betrayal. It was about a family that had been quietly fighting for each other even when it looked like they weren't. The next morning I drove back to the old house with the documents in my lap. When Emily opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Mike stood behind her, eyes hollow. I didn't scream. I simply handed them the will and played the video. The silence that followed was heavier than any rainstorm. Mike dropped to his knees and whispered, "I thought I was protecting you. I was so wrong." We didn't sell anything. Using the hidden assets from the $10 house, a small portfolio Dad had quietly grown, we paid off the debts together. The three of us spent the next months fixing both houses side by side. Laughing again, crying again, healing. I still live in the little house that once looked abandoned. Only now it's warm, painted soft blue, with flowers blooming where weeds once choked the yard. At 22, I learned the hardest truth. Sometimes the family that hurts you the most is the one worth redeeming. And sometimes the place you're kicked out of isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of the one that was always meant to save you. If you're out there feeling alone tonight, carrying a suitcase through the rain, keep walking. Your redemption house might be waiting around the next corner. Thank you for listening to my story. I still live in the little house that once looked abandoned. Only now it's warm, painted soft blue, with flowers blooming where weeds once choked the yard. At 22, I learned the hardest truth. Sometimes the family that hurts you the most is the one worth redeeming. And sometimes the place you're kicked out of isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of the one that was always meant to save you.